Yes, hello to Twitter,
Nice.
hello to YT, and
Yo. And how about Facebook? Are we good?
what's happening? That's the one that takes the longest to connect. Give me a second.
All right. Well, to those of you who already joined us, what's up? How you doing? I'm TQ. It's my brother JQ talking to you tea time from the Apothecary. And we have a very special guest with us today, Bob Root, someone I always enjoy talking to, Chief Technologist or Technical Officer at Keys, one of our favorite brands here at the Apothecary. Welcome, Bob.
Hey, thank you. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. Um, First of all, there must not be a rocket launch or a space launch right now because I know I wouldn't be able to get a hold of you during your work, right?
That's true. I mean, the big one is tomorrow. It is
Is it?
the biggest. And so when I jump off of this, I'll be on another conference call for that. First time in 10 years, we're going to put 2 astronauts up to the space station.
Wow.
Yep. Tomorrow at 4:50-ish Eastern time. Check it out on spacex.com. Pretty amazing. Everybody is just buzzed. It's really exciting because it was 10 years ago that the last shuttle flew, and my friend Mike was the shuttle launch director. So he's going to be there. President Trump is going to be there. The director of NASA is telling people to not show up because of C-19, but that ain't going to happen.
Yeah. So where is that happening from? Is that in Florida?
Yeah, Cape Canaveral. Actually, it's technically at Cape Kennedy, Launch Complex 39A,
Okay.
which is where Saturn took off back in the day.
Wow. That's really cool.
Very-
So yeah, we can talk more about that. I know you're a space, more than just a buff. It's, a passion of yours, and something you know a lot about. So we've talked about that before. But I think you picked out the tea we're drinking today, right? Am I
yeah,
correct?
Earl Grey.
All right. So
Yeah.
do you drink a lot of tea?
Um, Not a lot. I'll tell you that the funny story of the Earl Grey is that being a kid in Southern California, you don't drink a lot of tea.
Yeah.
Cerveza, some coffee, but so when I moved and lived in the UK, that was when I had the first experience. And the way the Brits make Earl Grey is about 4 bags for 1 cup. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a super buzz. Here's mine, as you can see, as dark as can be. So
Yeah.
so I figure it's like 4 Starbucks rolled up into a single cup.
That's cool. Well, we're big tea drinkers, and Earl Grey is one of those teas that it does make me feel like I'm in the UK. It sort of reminds me of my travels abroad from starting when I was a teenager, and put on pause right now. But
Yep.
uh, it's a tea that reminds me of travel. So very nice.
Yeah, it's certainly an acquired taste, but it's sort of like when you're in the Napa Valley is that you have a good red wine, it bites back, and
Yeah.
that's the way. That's certainly the way that I see Earl Grey in the tea world.
Yeah. Cool. So where you are right now, are you in Florida for that, or are you in
No,
New
no,
Mexico?
I'm actually in White Sands, New Mexico.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's where you spend most of your time, correct?
correct. Well, they're in Los Alamos.
Okay, nice. So I thought, for those of you who are on watching, we wanted Bob on because Keys, I think there's a number of reasons. First of all, Keys is just one of our favorite brands, bar none. Um, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But it seemed especially timely for a few reasons. One is that it's, at least here in Chicago, this weekend was like kicking off summer in full bore. It was 80 some degrees and
80,
sunny.
88 degrees, yeah.
Yeah. And I had to bust out the sunscreen, and it's sort of that times nicely with a bunch of things, Bob, right? First of all, we have Solar RX is your one of your best-selling products. I have our tester right here. But it's an amazing sunscreen, amazing selling, and just amazing for a few reasons, not the least of which is that it's very highly rated in environmental working groups roundup of sunscreens every year. So can you tell us about what happened?
And by highly rated, you mean lowly rated.
Yeah.
It got a 1, right? Am I right?
No, they did not go to the game show school to learn how to do rankings because they're
Yeah.
backwards. A 1 is best and a 10 is the worst.
Right.
Yeah, but you have a 1, which means essentially it's their rankings are based on toxicity score, and 1 being the lowest, is my understanding, and 10
Well,
being the most toxic, right?
well, this year, actually starting last year, they started to also use the grading for efficacy.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah, so 2 or 3 years ago, there were a lot of people in the 1-2 category. When they started gauging the efficacy and the toxicity, they blend and merge those numbers together. And then, of course, with the FDA, they want us to have our UVB slightly less than our UVA, so that you do get a little sense of when it's time to get out of the sun. And so we have these 3 factors now that the EWG has sort of followed into. And so the good news about that is that a lot of the 1s and 2s are now 3s and 4s. And so it's lonely at the good side, but
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. Jay, can you turn Bob up a little bit? Is that possible? Do you have control over that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I just want to make sure people can hear him. We can hear you, but it's a little bit soft. So
I can do something on my side.
sure. I think so. I guess I'm curious. Then maybe we can come back to the EWG and the sunscreen. But another thing is it's Melanoma Awareness Month. May is so we still have a few more days left of that, and that kind of is an appropriate segue into the history of your brand. So I'm wondering if you can sort of give us the story, about how you started this brand, why you started it, because there's, some specific reasons that are really interesting, I think.
Okay, well, I'll try to do the elevator version.
Yeah.
Because it can be very, very long. But basically, Wendy, my wife, girlfriend, we met many, many years ago at Val Kilmer's ranch near Santa Fe, and there was a kismet there. It was we got along very famously, very quickly, and so I was running a high-tech company in Silicon Valley. I was the CEO of a data storage company, and Wendy was a exec VP with Coca-Cola, and so the good news is that we hit it off. The bad news was I was in Silicon Valley and she was in Atlanta, Florida, and so we had a nice long distance relationship. Decided to get together. We both chucked our corporate careers. I was selling my company at the time, and decided, okay, I had enough of that stuff, and she wanted to leave Coca-Cola for no bad reasons. It was just a good time to chuck it out, and so we moved on to my boat in San Diego. Tough life, and it was sort of idyllic because we actually lived at the Sheraton Hotel Marina, so we had just it was like a Hollywood set. So it was
awesome.
very, very interesting. And Wendy and I actually started a consulting company called Orion, still exists. And it was basically going to work with high-powered teams. And we worked with companies like Pfizer and Apple, Qualcomm, Comcast, people like that. And then we discovered one afternoon on the boat this big red spot on Wendy's leg and down near her ankle. And as you know, she's quite tall. And so it was hard for her to see it. And so I spotted it. We had some friends that were at Scripps Clinic in San Diego, and it turned out to be melanoma. It was in situ, so that was the really good news about it. What happened after the surgery was very interesting because she was put on all sorts of prescription drugs, mainly skin type drugs, and they made her skin worse. The sunscreen literally caused her skin to crepe out. Like one day, and the next day it was like eczema, another day it was like psoriasis. It was getting really thin. And so basically, and this is the weird part of the story, is that I just, as an engineer, when you start something new, and I'm not talking about our company at this point, just, something, you basically take the whiteboard and clean it all off, and then start from zero. The only way I could do that for her was to tell her to get off of everything, all the prescription drugs, all the over-the-counter stuff, everything. And believe it or not, I just had her washed with Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap. And they were a fellow, they were in San Diego area, Escondido area. So we knew them very, very well. And I knew the quality and how good it was. But what was very interesting overall was that her skin turned around almost immediately. But the big but was that Castile soaps tend to be very alkaline. And her skin was so torn up from all the junk that I literally started making a soap for her to replace Dr. Bronner's. And rather than using olive oil, I used avocado, jojoba, all of these different types of oils so that they would saponify more intensely or more completely. And what happened then was I was able to create a Castile-like soap that we added back in some essential oils and some back into some avocado so that it was very emollient. And that's how I'm describing our Island RX product, which is our very first product. And so the net of it was that what happened was she got better. The pH was down around 9. So, and putting the oils back into the soap. Remember, David Bronner said, you can't put oil back in the soap. Well, I'm an engineer. I don't listen to anybody. So it's so it worked. And then Wendy said the big statement. I think it was a command. I need a sunblock, and I don't want to look like a mime. How are you going to do that? And I went, thank you very much. And we still hadn't made the company. It still was not a product thing. That happened because of Island RX, because we had friends in the UK that came and visited us, stayed in our guest room. And I had this bottle of soap, clear plastic bottle with a Sharpie marker that said, it just said RX on it. And so our friend Brian from the UK stole it. It was, by the time it was gone, I didn't give it to him, but it disappeared. Let's say. And a couple of weeks later, he emailed me and he said, "Hey, this has worked for my son's acne. Can you send me some more?" And so I did. I sent him a couple of bottles, and it was about a month later, he said, "Could I have 50 bottles?" And I went, "Okay, Brian, what's up?" He said, "Well, the only thing is, mate, could you do something about the label?" And because I had just taken a Sharpie and marked the bottles and stuff for him.
Yeah.
So the net of this is that Brian actually started selling our soap in the UK. To his friends' children that were having acne issues, and it was working almost overnight. And of course, that was before we realized that most acne is caused by bacteria. Of course, a great alkaline soap with some good essential oils like clary sage in it and stuff, it just immediately worked on the acne thing. So anyhow, as the story goes, we decided to productize the company. It started with 4 products. The sunscreen, and again, it's a moisturizer for daily use. It's not a go-to-beach type product, but it was something for Wendy. And we had some friends of ours in Belgium, ironically, who make zinc oxide, but they make it for mega yacht owners. That sounds really funny, but varnish, the thing that keeps varnish from ruining the wood is zinc oxide. And so they had developed a way of making zinc oxide, doing a technique that we used in high tech called vapor deposition. And so they basically just liquefy the zinc oxide and then put it into like a rain chamber, which converts it into little spheres. And we're talking about, you know, around 1 micron spheres, which make them optically transparent. And so
Wow.
you get the picture, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to get the picture because the biggest complaint for zinc oxide is that it makes people look white or bluish tint.
Yeah, kind of gives a tint to the skin that's not appealing.
Yeah, and as you know, you've been selling it for years, is that I think we're like 12 years together or something, I think.
It's a long time.
Long time. And
Yeah.
and so, as you know, it does not have a blue cast or anything. It's actually helps with, in the Hollywood world, it helps actors because it diffuses the skin a little bit. So they'll often use it on camera.
Yeah, I mean, your one of your other products is called Luminos, and I remember when we first talked, you told me that story about the cameras, you know, sort of giving this luminous effect to the skin.
Yep.
And one of the things that I always enjoy talking about you is that you ground things in both. Oftentimes we hear about the importance of the natural side of things or avoiding harmful chemicals, but oftentimes the people talking about that lack the scientific background to talk about things in a scientific way. And I always enjoy the fact that you are able to sort of give me both sides at once, which is something that for me is really fun and fascinating.
Well, the sort of fun thing that I always like to tell people first, it's sort of like, you know, like a comedian telling people they're not a comedian. I'm not a chemist. As a matter of fact, I'm a physicist, mechanical engineer. So I sort of come at things from the physical perspective. And to be perfectly honest with you, when we attended our first Expo East show, it was the first year it was in Washington, not the first year, but it was in Washington, D.C. this one particular year. And so we were there and we were late. We actually didn't think we were going to be able to get into the show. And we got a call like 3 weeks before the show that, hey, a booth opened up and you could be in there. So turns out, you know, they put these catalogs together. Everybody puts their pizzazz about what they're going to show and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Catalog. Well, for us, what happened was we were so late that we had to go as an addendum in the front. So of course, when people opened their show catalog, the paper fell out, they picked it up and they read. And in our particular case, we used the term chemical free. It was ironic that the major manufacturers at that time, Avalon, Aubrey, people like that, were telling through the EWG that they were going to remove all the parabens and all the things in the next 4 or 5 years. And here we show up and
no one's ever heard of you yet.
Nobody heard of us, and we never heard about the chemicals. So maybe if I had heard that I was supposed to put all this junk in there, so to your point is that we literally kind of have always come at the functionality perspective. And by the way, we're natural, no junk. And so it was interesting. The show opened. We were in the back corner. We figured it'd be 3 or 4 days before anybody would find us, and we were mobbed. And the reason we were mobbed is that we had what we called a cosmetically clear sunblock.
Yeah.
Nowadays we have to call it sunscreen. The FDA makes us do that, but it is a physical block using zinc oxide oxide.
Well, and that makes sense that you're a physicist because it's literally a physical block. Right?
That's the mineral. That's what's the difference
That's
between
the
the mineral
mineral. I
sunscreen.
mean, I was wondering if you could talk about, because when you first came out, I remember I was working in the front of our store and people were freaking out. We could not keep it on the shelves. And everyone was like, finally, somebody made one where I don't look blue. And so, but then there was like I'll say a marketing movement, maybe a few years after that, of people saying non nano became a thing, and I mean, I guess if you could speak to that a little bit. I know a couple things about it. One is that probably all particles of zinc oxide used out there would be considered nano, and that from the studies that I could find, I didn't see any significant reason to believe that the zinc is getting in the bloodstream. So, but you would know more about it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It still rears its head. Right about this time every year when the sunscreen report comes out, our customer service gets flooded with, nano versus non-nano and stuff like that. What we now know that we didn't know then is that you need a mixture to broaden the spectrum. So we used to be pure nanotechnology, and now we've moved into various particle sizes in there, which using one testing method in the industry, it averages out as about a 1 micron type of thing. That's not deceptive by any means. It's just the way that we're required to state the measurement. What's interesting is back when it started, we looked at some testing that had been done by Boots in the UK because they had their star rating, and initially Boots was saying anything nano is bad. Well, one of the things as a physicist that I can sure tell you is that if there is a zinc oxide or titanium dioxide sunscreen based on those materials, and they're clear, they're nano. It's just as simple as that. The interesting thing though is that we were beaten up, as you well pointed
Yeah, I
out.
remember.
It was like Bill Murray's Groundhog Day. It's like every May I wake up and it's like May 1st. Sudden, my email box is full of nano questions, and
Nice job, Jay. You did it to him again.
No,
yeah,
Come on.
but I'm trying to settle it a little bit. So
yeah.
that,
Well, no, I appreciate it because it sort of needs settling. But what happened is there was this PhD doctor at the EWG named Jane Houlihan, who actually went out and started pulling all the studies together, the peer review studies. And right at about 350 or 400 studies, she decided to give up. That it was enough because none of them showed any marked penetration. The reverse bronze testing, which is a standard in the industry to tell permeability of anything, is never had any leakage or anything like that. So the blood-brain barrier is far smaller than nano, although a lot of people, made that up, but they didn't have anything that could substantiate it. Over the years, it sort of has settled out, at least within the people that are in the know. Yeah. But every year there's, some influencer that wants their 15 minutes of fame, and
yeah.
they bring the whole thing. And
Well, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of clear it up. And because it is confusing, because the marketing of people saying non-nano, it makes me as a consumer frightened that I'm getting something that I shouldn't be. And so it's nice to settle people's minds a little bit,
Yeah. And they should feel that way.
Yeah, I want to just do a reintroduction. If you've just joined us, I want to say some hellos as well. I'm TQ, it's my brother JQ. We're drinking some Earl Grey tea at the suggestion of Bob Root, who is chief technologist at Keys, one of our favorite brands. We've just been talking about Solar RX, which is a sunscreen, an everyday sunscreen, and talking about how it's transparent. The ability, they were sort of the first on the market to make a truly transparent zinc oxide product. It's melanoma month, melanoma awareness month, and sort of that plays into the history of this brand as Bob and Wendy, his wife, who's the CEO of the brand, you created this product among others for her in particular as she was going through treatment, I understand, and sort of post-treatment of melanoma, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. So I want to say hi to Therese. Thanks for joining us. Carolyn and Tracy. Tracy shouted out while we were talking that she just bought some Keys eye cream and she can't wait to try it out. So thank you, Tracy. We appreciate that. I'm sure Bob does too. And Carolyn, you asked a question about stomach, but I don't know. That may have been more about tea than about skincare. So if you give us some more information, we'll try to get that answered. Bob, I want to talk about another thing that I feel like you were a pioneer in, as far as, we've been in, our business is 145 years old this year. So we've been in the sort of natural or sort of more conscious, about ingredients space for a long, long time. And we see almost everything that comes out, whether we carry it or not. And one of the things that always impressed me was you have these sort of airless pumps that you use for most of your products, especially like the moisturizers, things like that. Can you talk about that? Because that's to me, that was another thing that just made me so excited about your brand when I first learned about it. It must, as you mentioned, I didn't look at the date, but probably 12 years ago or something like that. So talk to me about that. I know maybe they're a little more widespread now, but you were the first, and also still you don't see them nearly as much as I would expect.
Yeah, they are showing up, but they're cosmetically different looking. They use a little bit different technology, but basically, let me talk about the technology a little bit. It's maybe hard to see now. I can't. It's just not showing up enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you turn it around, Anthony, so I can see the little stripe between the labels.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if you're looking at the bottom of that, you'll see that there's a piston.
Yeah.
And what it does is that pump on the top creates a vacuum that pulls the contents up, which pulls that piston up. And so as it follows up, it keeps the air out of the system. So that's why they call them airless. We actually worked with a company in the Netherlands to design and develop it. So we were sort of on the bleeding edge of the technology now, 13, 14 years ago. And so the premise of it is fairly simple. Remember I told you at the the Skin Expo East show, we had all these people showing up wondering how come and how were we able to make sunblock that had no preservatives?
Yeah.
And the answer was airless. And every biologist knows that mold, which is the worst thing that can happen with natural products, it happens to all of them. And people tend to use retarders like rosemary extract and some things like that. But they almost work. They don't totally work. And what's interesting is that mold is a factor of two things, water and oxygen. Okay, so if you make something airless, you can have all the product you want in there, and if there's no air, it can't form a mold. Yeah. And so the reason we went to the airless was so that we wouldn't have to use preservatives. The industry tended, and still does, to use methylparaben, which is a biocide. It kills good bacteria and bad bacteria, which is a subject we should talk a little bit about because
I want to.
It's not indiscriminate. It kills everything. And so the problem is you put it on the skin and it kills the microbiome on your skin as well. So, but back to the point. So the airless we used. So that what we could do is fill the bottle. That the plug, the pump on the top is off when we're filling it. We fill it with an airless machine that uses nitrogen. It's a piston type filler. And then we nitrogen sparge it the same way that winemakers do.
Yeah, or
Because
they use that in fish oil as well.
exactly,
Yeah.
same technique and same purpose, same reason. And so we sparge it with the nitrogen, it's capped, and then air pressure is put to the bottom. There's a small hole, Anthony. If you look at the very bottom, you'll see there's a tiny little hole.
Yeah.
We put the pressure,
I don't know if that shows up. Yeah.
pressure on that to get rid of any of the void at the top. And
That's a one-way,
it's a one
hole.
a one-way hole.
Yeah.
Cool.
While
That's
we're
so
talking,
cool.
just while we have this, because I sprayed it out, but I want to say, I know, sorry for my camera, but I want to sort of demonstrate how quickly there is not, like I haven't, that was a lot, just rubbing it on my arm, but I'm not rubbing hard and there is no white cast, bluish cast. And, you know, the other thing, as far as when I'm on the beach, if I'm going on a vacation, I don't mind having sort of like coconut smelling, sunscreeny smelling stuff. And that has a certain pleasure to it. But if I'm using something as a daily protection in my life in Chicago, I don't necessarily want to smell like a coconut vacation all the time. And so one of the other things, I really like this.
Agree to disagree, man. Agree to disagree.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're a permanent vacation guy. But it's like the clary sage or whatever it is, but there's just a touch of essential oil smell in here. It doesn't smell. It's a very neutral, pleasant product to put on. I find for just kind of any use, and that's one of the things that I think makes it so special.
Yeah, let me go off to the side a little bit here in regard to that too, because we're always focusing on the active ingredient of the sunscreen. But what was very interesting, you mentioned that our Luminos product, it was actually, I developed it for a motion picture many years ago. And what we discovered was that the particular actor in this movie was very focused on being all natural. And she wanted to make sure that whatever it was, in the case of like Luminos, that that it was not only all natural, but like Leo DiCaprio says, I love the products as long as they do as good as what the conventional stuff does, because my face is my business. And so that the part that is kind of the unsung hero about of Solar RX is that it is, the base of it is Luminos.
Yeah.
And so we have this super emollient avocado, black seed, carrot seed based shea butter, comes from Ghana, directly from the tribe. But we do this little secret. Years ago, we decided we wanted to put aloe vera in. And the problem with aloe vera is when it's taken out in the field in a liquid form, in a gel form, it has a half-life of about a week and a half. And so we worked with this company to develop a jet dry, freeze dry type of technology. And we take an agave aloe and we get all the moisture out of it and it turns it into a crystal. Now, the reason we did that initially was the polysaccharide half-life was important to us, but we already were shipping like 98% of the weight was water. And so, you know, when you're shipping something from the California borders or from Mexico, it gets really expensive. And so what we did was we did the dehydration primarily for the polysaccharides, but the benefit of it was that we were able to ship it dry, basically. And then 200 parts water back to 1 part of aloe vera, brought it back to a gel. So it was cool, and the polysaccharides were there and everything. So in this movie, which was a ghost type movie, they wanted something to make a couple of kids look like an apparition. So rather than reconstituting the aloe vera at 200 to 1, I did it at blank because it's a secret. I'm not going to tell you what I did. But I reconstituted it to a place where on camera it sort of fuzzed out the kids and made them look like they were apparitions. And
That's so cool.
yeah, so what was funny is the makeup artist who worked on that, who's still one of our beta testers, said, well, this could be really good on a date. Uh, could you make me some that isn't so crazy?
Yeah.
And so we did. We basically put a little less aloe and reconstituted it differently and created Luminos. And Luminos is a very refined version of our original Tortuga hand lotion. Very similar in a lot of ways, but different formulation, but with the addition of the aloe vera. And so it creates a shimmer, luminescent effect on camera. And of course, in person, it does the exact same thing. And nowadays, with Instagram and all the selfies and everything, we actually have a little bit of a cult that buy Luminos just for doing selfies.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe
Yeah,
it.
they have these little ring lights they pop onto the camera, and then they use camera 360 and all these different things that can thin their faces. And,
Yeah. I need that. That's
I have a question, Bob. As a psoriasis sufferer myself, the newer formulations of Island RX, is that going to be better for me even because it's allowing more UVB, which is what the dermatologist has said that's been calming. When I do get sun, I know it's good, but I'm also getting UVA at that point. But the
yeah,
UVB they've said is really good for taking down a flare up of my psoriasis.
yeah, and no, we're so effective. We're actually technically about an SPF 50, but the testing methods that the FDA uses and things puts us at an odd number, like 47 or something like that. And there's so many stringent requirements to go above 30 plus. That's sort of this magic number that you have to jump through much higher hoops, more like the fire hoops at Mallory Square in Key West. So the answer is no, it's not going to help you.
Okay.
What I would say that you want to check on is, especially for psoriasis, especially if it's asymmetrical, like if you have it on one side more than the other, it can possibly be something that you're using that has sulfates and glycols in it. So you really want to check out what you're using on your skin or what you're being exposed to. Now, let me give you a kind of a scary example. We had a mom that brought a little boy in. We were at Capitol Drug in West Hollywood, and she brought her, he must have been 6-month-old son in, and he had these red marks. He was diagnosed with psoriasis, and it was on the back of his calves. And so we went through the litany of things. Do you use this? No. This? No. All these things. And she was very, very clean, tied with bleach and Tide products in laundry. And this is where we started getting the idea is we have more trouble with that because it's embedded in the fabric and especially things like dryer sheets and stuff like that. So we see more psoriasis diagnosis go away when people switch to like Ecover or one of the laundry detergents that are very, very clean.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice it was better when I was using that Charlie's, which is a really good brand. But dryer sheets too, huh?
Oh yeah, dryer sheets have phthalates in them and they're really, really bad. But the story with the little boy was, she said, I gotta go. He's got a birthday party to go to. I'm gonna go put him in his car seat. And I said, let me go look at that car seat. And so we go out to the car and it's got fabric inserts right where his legs are. Came from China. Okay, there's a rule in the United States, a law, that any fabrics that come in the United States have to have fire retardants in them. And so what we deduced was that the fabric in that car seat had
Hmm.
pure fire retardant. And so what I said was, why don't you take a Turkish towel, just a plain old white Turkish towel, cover it up, see if this thing goes away. And about 2 weeks later, she emailed me, said it's gone. So we have tons of stories of, but every manufacturer would like to say, okay, use this product and it's going to fix this, that, and the other thing. The problem is if somebody's using something in their life or being exposed to something in their life that's actually causing it, then it's sort of a hard battle for me to use my
Hmm.
products to catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you stop it, figure out what you're using that's causing it, and then use my product like Island RX, the soap. The clary sage is one of the best things for psoriasis.
Cool.
And
That's
yeah,
amazing.
so it's
And that falls in line with the way that me and T have been doing things diet wise as well, which is like what you eat is less important as to what you avoid, actually. And so, for us, and maybe this is a good segue into talking about the microbiome
Yeah.
because not compromising your microbiome and not feeding the bad microbiome is maybe the strengthening that your good microbiome needs sometimes,
right. Well, it's
Well, the
it,
microbiome is not good or bad, but I know what you mean.
you know
Those
what I mean?
particular strains within
The
there.
good, yeah, your good buddies and your bad buddies, right?
right, right. Well, basically we have more bacteria on our skin than we have skin cells. It's just
Wow.
right, right. And so now we introduce pathogens, and they could be, stuff that we know names of, like MRSA and staph and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And that basic colony bacteria, the good bacteria, your good microbiome on the skin, is the same as the microbiome in your gut. We know that our gut operates on bacteria, and that's how we digest our food, and that's what's good about it. Skin is exactly the same. So what happens when we go out of balance? Um, this is on point, but it's going to sound off point for a second. Is the majority of products, about 97%, 96% of products out there for skincare, use a thing called methylparaben. It's usually in a product at 0.5%. So somebody, I can't remember who it was, said that the average woman uses about 35 to 38 products a day, skincare products. Now, if you take 0.5% times, let's say 40, because I can do the math easy, you're looking at 20% paraben levels on the skin because it's cumulative. What happens is, like when uh, your toothpaste that has sulfates, SLS, things like that, kills the gut microbiome, which causes you to have leaky gut syndrome, poor digestion, all these kinds of various different things. So if you avoid those things in your gut that could kill the bacteria, then your gut is healthy. The skin is exactly the same. So if you're putting 20% paraben, which kills every form of bacteria indiscriminately on the skin, you're basically exposing yourself to all the bad stuff, the pathogens, gram-positive rods, gram-negative rods, all those nasty ones out there. They get out of imbalance because in the simplest way to say it is that the good bacteria on our skin keep the bad in check. And if they're not in check, they're going to go out of sorts. And we see that in the form of eczema, rashes, psoriasis, things like that. And at the very beginning, and I still say that 50% of all skin disorders are misdiagnosed and caused by chemicals and products. Just that simple.
Wow. Wow. This is, I mean, I think I'm in total agreement with everything you've said, and that's been our experience as well. I think one thing I want to come back to for a second, because I don't think I've ever heard it said in quite that way, is the idea that your toothpaste could be a contributor to your leaky gut issues or your digestive issues. Because I think that, I mean, and it makes complete sense, but I don't think that's a dots that I often hear connected.
Well, can't remember if I told you this or not, but I wrote a book over between Christmas and New Year's. About 2 years ago, Wendy and I went on paleo, and it worked great. We really didn't have any issues with it. Gut health improved, all this kind of stuff. But it wasn't doing totally everything we wanted, so we started intermittent fasting. So we don't eat until 11 o'clock, and then we till about 7 or 8 in the evening, and then we don't eat overnight. So it's a daily intermittent fasting type of thing.
Yeah.
And we got off sugar, totally off sugar. And so we now know, of course, the reason doctors give kids sugar for minor things is because it's a narcotic. Sugar actually deadens. It's a pain reliever, and it's a nice one sometimes, but especially in the form of a brownie. But
Yeah.
so I've been brownie free for almost 2 years. But I wrote this book called Paleo Keto. Sorry, I'm saying paleo. I mean keto.
Sure.
I'm writing a book on paleo, so now
Yeah.
my brain's a little fried. But anyhow, it's called Keto Plus on Amazon, and it's really about keto, intermittent fasting, and getting off of sugar. What I discovered in this process that I knew for the skin was that if you put some bad products on your skin, the big box store gallon size lotion, that it was full of parabens, that it was going to cause some disorders. And I had some issues with my wellness doctor in Seattle, Dr. Jonathan Wright, where he was talking about gut biome and some things like that and what could start to disrupt it. So I started to study it. And one of the things that I was dealing with, because my body fat was up 18% or something, it wasn't super bad, but it was up there. When I went on to keto, after about 90 days, I was down to a little below 7% body fat.
Wow.
What happened was very interesting, is that all the fat soluble vitamins that were trapped in my fat tissue were released. So going from a bad vitamin D test and various different types of tests, vitamin D is a fat soluble hormone vitamin.
Right.
And what I couldn't figure out was why all of a sudden did my vitamin D and magnesium and all these different levels come into normal, and my A1C dropped like a rock.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, what is this all about? So I started to really look into these areas of what was causing a lot of things like leaky gut and those things, because I was curious. And what I found out was a lot of toothpaste is dominant sodium lauryl sulfate. A lot of the patches that people wear, they put SLS in the patch so that it makes the skin more permeable. And then I started thinking, well, the gut is one of the most permeable things that you can have. And so if we're eating all these preservatives,
They're just,
you're basically screwing your gut up, just as simple as that. And so there are so many things in our environment that have preservatives in them. It's just amazing. And those preservatives basically disrupt the gut. And then we take a whole bunch of lactobacillus probiomes and probiotics, things like that, to try to bring it back, when it's the same thing I was talking about the skin. So we're taking something in that's wrecking our gut, and then we try to take something else to fix it, when what we're supposed to be doing is stop wrecking the gut to begin with.
Right.
So you realize, hey, I can have a sandwich with a natural mayo and some sauerkraut, and drink it down with some kombucha, which I don't like actually, but
good for you.
I do it. It's the old hold your nose, and drink it, because I know it's good for me. And it's amazing how when you even think your gut's good and you go away from all the crap, it's amazing how good you feel.
Yeah. So to kind of bring it back to some people here, because people are giving us thumbs up about intermittent fasting, giving up sugar. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, because you obviously see a lot of this and you're talking about the problems people have, I guess to give some, hopefully you're going to give us some optimism about this. Do you find that for most people, I mean, it seems, this is my experience and what you just described, is the body able to, absent those preservatives and absent the sugar, does the body have the ability to restore the damage that we've been doing or have done, generally speaking?
Unassisted, no, I don't believe so. I'm not a nutritionist. Jonathan Wright would be somebody to have on your show. He's the guru of all gurus on this subject.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, and he's a Harvard MD that turned into basically a nutritionist. And I'm not speaking for Jonathan, but what he would probably say is if your stomach's a wreck, that you're going to have to do something proactive. And so for me, the most proactive thing you can do is get off the junk.
Yeah.
And get off the preservatives and the stuff that are going to go in and kill the bacteria, and then supplement it, but with natural things, things that are fermented, things that are going to naturally be prebiotic, where they're going to grow that. And then you add like lactobacillus sporigine or some of those things that'll build its own colony. That's why I like lactobacillus sporigine, because once it's in the gut, it actually starts to build its own system.
Yeah, colonizes the gut.
It colonizes the gut, right? Exactly. Yeah. So, and then I think you can back off of it, but you can't go back to the junk.
No, that's clear, and I think that makes sense. And I know we're going to run up against some time situations, but I want to ask you a few more questions, if that's okay. Sure. I want to bring this back to the skin, because you talked about, I know on your products you mentioned probiome. So like, there's this whole idea, and Jay and I sometimes geek out on the idea that, we're like donuts. The inside of us is still outside, right? It's a tube. And so the idea that our gut is drastically different than the outside of our body there's a false sense of difference there. We have bacteria on the outside and on the inside, and we need to keep it healthy everywhere. I think hence the concept of, like, people talk about the holobiome or something like that. But I'm curious to hear what you can do, what we're doing. And you think you just referred to a little bit of it, but talk to us about restoring the biome at an external beauty and skin level.
It's just about the same as what you're talking about. The bacteria type and the type of colonies and things are a little different, but they're fundamentally the same. And what's very, I think, important is, like we were talking about the gut for the skin, is you want to get off of whatever's causing the problem and then use things that will actually generate more favorable bacteria on your skin. That's where the probiome term comes from. We actually started with National Institutes of Health, 10 years, 12 years ago, I can't remember now, with the microbiome project, which initially was about the gut, but immediately moved to the skin and other areas, the eyes, places like this, everywhere, the nose, all these areas. And of course, now we know with viruses, C19 and stuff like that, they enter through the nose. And you have to think, it's not, these are bacteria, they're not good bacteria, they're bad bacteria that are coming and invading, but it's similar in the sense of the way a virus is. So what we want to do, and what we're all doing is, right, we're wearing masks so that we can prevent that, the C19. And at the same time, we don't necessarily do that for our skin. We expose our skin to a lot of chemicals every single day. People in big cities, the hydrocarbons are amazing. I used to, when we were at Pfizer, I used to walk to 235 East 42nd Street from near Broadway at the hotel I stayed at. And I literally could take a washcloth and rinse my face, and it was black. Yeah. And the same thing walking the other way. And so these hydrocarbons and things all attack the skin. And so things that are probiome cleanliness, just washing your skin. We know that's good for C19, but it's also good for reducing the bacteria levels. You don't want to kill the bacteria, you just want to lower them. Let the good bacteria work. Same thing with the gut. And it's just a simple thought process. And then you can use some products, and we use the term probiome. It's a registered mark of ours because we found that much of our products that have that on the label actually do affect the levels of bacteria on the skin, the good bacteria.
That's awesome. So there's a couple things. I want to bring it back to Keys a little bit so we can talk about the products. And so I want to also show my shirt and say, if you're going to wash with Island RX would be a good idea. We do need to, but like you said, it's not about killing everything. It's about maintaining a healthy ecosystem on the skin, which is really cool. But I want to, before we do the roundup, one of the things that I really, really love is, we talked at the beginning about your sort of your passion for space exploration. And I want to talk about, if you would, for a second, because you got into the aloe vera, how you were able to come up with a replacement moisturizer that could be used in space, right?
Okay. Well,
I love this. I think it's so cool.
A fun story. There was an astronaut named Scott Kelly. He stayed up there for the longest time. His brother was an experiment, his twin, who stayed on Earth, and they were doing a kind of a DNA matching to see what happens over time. But he had terrible skin problems, and as it turned out, a lot of the astronauts have extremely dry skin. When I used to fly all the time, airplanes were pretty dry, and I would get all these problems. So what we figured out how to do, petroleum jelly is made from oil. It's made from crude oil, and it's refined in such a way, but it's still technically explosive and can catch on fire. And so basically the astronauts at the International Space Station didn't have anything they could really deal with. They were trying all sorts of different things, and some things were working. But I got this crazy idea. I was spending a lot of time in Canaveral, and I got this crazy idea that we could jelly, like petroleum jelly, avocado oil. And we sort of went through the process, and we jellied avocado oil, which is non-flammable. And so, as the story simply goes, is that it was for Scott Kelly, even though he never got to use it. It was for Scott Kelly that Avo Jel was developed, and then the rest of the avocado oil-based jellies that we have are mimic things like Bengay or Icy Hot and different things like that. But they have no petroleum in them, and so. So there's a two-sided story. One is it was for the astronauts, but the good news is there's no side byproducts within the jelly that are going to be problems for your skin.
Yeah. So for astronauts out there, get this before you go up. For the rest of us, how nice to have a moisturizer, sort of a heavy-duty petroleum-like moisturizer with no petroleum byproducts or anything like that, just avocado oil, which is so cool. And it really does. It's like super slick. I'm such a fan of this. Well, I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of Keys, but this is one of those products that highlights one of the things that makes you guys so special.
We it's always sort of a funny story with our Ready Care, which is the sprayable neem Ayurvedic lotion.
Yeah.
One of the things is an old movie called My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
And there was a character in there, this old man.
With the Windex, right?
Yeah. Windex on everything. And so the code name for a lot of our products and insiders is they call it Windex because it just doesn't do one thing. And so it's really funny. We got this note about Avo Jel that this engineer who is doing food filling, they use piston fillers for food. They're using now Avo Jel instead of petroleum jelly because it's non-toxic.
Wow.
And they can put it in their piston fillers and not worry about it.
Wow, that's
That's so
awesome.
cool. That's so cool. I know you have like 20 more stories like that are these interesting tidbits, and it just leads me to say that we need to have you back sometime to talk about more of the sort of fun stories, because I never get tired of talking to you. I view it as we talk maybe 3 or 4 times a year, I feel like, and it's always one of the highlights of my week, month, whatever, because I just learned so many things. Let's talk about, for a second, I just want to say, so we're talking keys. Bob, you are the chief technologist. You have developed these products. Your wife, Wendy, is the CEO. It's a fantastic line. For those of you out there watching who don't know the brand, please check it out. We'll put links everywhere that we need to. But I'd like to give away some products too. So I thought, why don't we, since we talked about today, Island RX, so if you show us some love on any of the channels, we'll give away an Island RX. We'll give away a Solar RX because, the sun's out. You need to stay protected and you need to do it safely. And it's really one of the best out there, as mentioned by the EWG and me. And I'd like to do an Avo Gel because I'm such a fan of that product. So, just like you get to throw away your Vaseline, petroleum stuff and just put that in your cabinet for next time you have a need for that type of product. So show us some love. You'll get one of these products if you get chosen by Greta, our random name picker. And Bob, is there anything else you want to say? I mean, if people are curious about keys, obviously we'll link up to you, and we have a lot of information on our website, but where's the place to start if someone has never used a Keys product? Is it the Solar RX, or what would you say?
Well, actually, one that everyone generally loves more than anything is a combination. It's our Island RX foaming wash, because it really cleans and it doesn't disrupt the skin. Our eye butter and Luminos, and then for the day. So think about Luminos is for night and when you're moisturizing, and then Solar RX is for the day and it's moisturizing. So that's like the holy quad, the four horsemen of our product line. And that's a great place to start. It's one of the things that's very interesting about our products is that most products on the market have probably 65 to 70% water is their ingredient. We're rarely above a few single digits for ours. So when you're getting a 100 milliliter bottle, it lasts a long, long, long time.
That's true.
And so,
and you're not shipping a bunch of water all over the country, which feels wasteful. It's silly from a business standpoint, but also from an environmental one, right?
Well, yeah, and from a retailer's perspective, if you have something that's just effective that takes 4 times the footprint on your shelf, it costing you money too. So, yeah, so I think that's a great place to start. Our eye butter is universally men and women. Hollywood runs on eye butter and Luminos. Those two are something.
Cool. Well, why don't we add those in as well? Because I agree, those are fantastic products, and we could let people try them out. Remember to put on sunscreen. It is Melanoma Awareness Month. It's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to Bob right now. Solar RX will give all the links. And we're getting some people. John, thank you. He's saying, I love Island RX. Kristen Lee told us, I enjoyed this. Thank you so much. And I'm sure there'll be more of you. We'll do the giveaway sometime tomorrow. So if you're catching this late, still give us some love on the comments, and you'll be in the running for this. Okay.
Bob, it was great talking to you, and I appreciate how you view everything in such a holistic way, and that the skin and gut health, and that you wrote this book. I mean, let's link that book up below. I want to get a copy myself, and it sounds like a lot of similarities to what me and T already follow, which is the plant paradox diet from Dr. Gundry. And so,
that changed my life, Bob. Last time I saw you, I was probably 25 pounds heavier.
We've been, off the sugar and doing prebiotic heavy diets for for 2 years as well. So it's nice to hear a lot of the things that we've been sort of stabbing out there is like, oh no, somebody who's really smart agrees. And so, um,
There's,
so
there's a gal out of San Diego, Rhonda Patrick, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. It's good for everybody to look up, especially in the areas of vitamin D and these areas, because our society is vitamin D deficient, and there's a lot of goes on with us. It's based on our vitamin D levels. So have everybody, you should check into Rhonda yourselves.
we'll do.
Yeah, that's great.
I was wondering, outside of using safer products for on our skin, like the Keys products, I was wondering, is there like, like me and T often talk about this, like, what are your, if you had to only take 3 supplements, what would your 3 supplements, in addition to your topical one, internal supplements? What are the ones that you feel like besides diet can help support a healthy microbiome?
Okay, well, I do a probiotic, lactobacillus sporgine, 6,000 IU of vitamin D. This is going to drive you crazy. 6 grams of 6,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C, and 75,000 milligrams of vitamin A.
Wow. Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. I
Cool.
appreciate
Thank you for
that. I
sharing
can't
that
wait
with
to
us.
talk to you again. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Bob, so good to see you. Thank you for
too.
giving us your time. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to the next time. Hope to have you back.
All right,
Well, thank
everybody.
you.
All right. Say hi to Wendy and the whole team. All right.